There are days when the world feels heavy. The light seems a little dimmer, the silence in your home a little louder. On days like this, a voice often appears. It's a quiet voice, a familiar one. It whispers all the things you should have done, all the ways you aren't enough. It is the voice of your inner critic, and on your toughest days, it is relentless. We're taught to fight this voice, to push through, to be resilient. But what if resilience isn't about being harder? What if it's about being softer? There is an ancient symbol for this kind of strength, the lotus flower. It does not grow on a pristine mountaintop. It grows out of the mud. Its beauty is not born from avoiding the darkness, but by rising through it. This is the Lotus Method. It is not a quick fix or a hollow mantra. It is a profound, science-backed practice for meeting your own suffering with the one thing that can heal it: compassion. This is the story of how you can learn to become your own sanctuary, especially on the days you feel you deserve it the least. What happens when a mapmaker gets lost? What happens when the one who charts the human soul finds himself adrift in an uncharted ocean with no land in sight? This is precisely what happened to the psychiatrist Carl Jung, one of the 20th century's great explorers of the inner world. At the very peak of his career, after a painful and public break with his mentor, Sigmund Freud, the ground beneath his feet gave way. What had once felt certain, his theories, his methods, his understanding of the human mind, suddenly dissolved into uncertainty. He was left in a state of terrifying isolation, a period of profound disorientation that he would later call his dark night of the soul. The compass he had used to guide so many others was shattered, and he was left alone with the disquieting silence of his own unmapped territory. The world outside saw a brilliant physician, a man of formidable intellect and growing renown. But inside, Jung felt he was coming apart. He was plagued by haunting visions, by images of floods consuming entire continents, rivers of blood spreading across Europe, and an old man guiding him through shadowed landscapes. At first, he feared he was descending into madness. After all, the voices and figures he saw did not belong to waking life. They belonged to the deep, mythic layers of the psyche, the realm of dreams and archetypes. And yet, something in Jung refused to turn away. He sensed that these inner experiences, as frightening as they were, held meaning, perhaps even guidance. The conventional path for a man of science would have been clear: to suppress these experiences, to pathologize them, to medicate them into silence, to treat the encroaching darkness as a sign of illness, something to be fought, to be conquered, to be buried. But Jung did something truly radical. He did not run. He did not fight. He turned toward the chaos. He chose to listen. He began to record what he saw. Every image, every voice, every symbol, with the same curiosity he once brought to his patients. In the stillness of his study, he would close his eyes and descend inward, into the living theater of his own unconscious. What he found there would later form the foundation of what he called active imagination. It was a practice of dialogue with the psyche, a bridge between the rational mind and the vast, mysterious world beneath it. But in the beginning, it was pure chaos. He wrote that it felt as if he were falling into the depths, as if the familiar walls of his mind were dissolving into myth. Yet, out of that descent, something extraordinary began to take shape. He realized that the psyche was not an enemy to be conquered, but a living ecosystem, a dynamic field of symbols, instincts, and intelligence, seeking integration. His crisis, then, was not a breakdown. It was a breakthrough, a metamorphosis, the moment when the scientist became the mystic. It was here, in the heart of darkness, that Jung would begin to understand the true nature of the soul, not as a concept to be studied, but as a reality to be lived. And this descent, this encounter with chaos, would give birth to one of the most mysterious and visionary works of the modern era, the Red Book. This decision was an act of immense courage. Instead of silencing the voices, he began a secret dialogue with them, documenting this harrowing journey in what would later be known as the Red Book. This was not a clinical record. It was a sacred text of his own unfolding. He wrote, he painted intricate, circular designs he called mandalas, intuitively seeking a center in the swirling chaos of his psyche. He gave form and voice to the figures that appeared in his dreams and visions, treating them not as symptoms, but as messengers. He began to see his breakdown not as an illness to be cured, but as an initiation to be lived through. He consciously stepped into the mud of his own soul, driven by a deep, intuitive faith that something vital was buried there, something that could only be found by going down into the darkness, not by trying to climb out of it. And he was right. The treasure he sought was there. From that inner mud, from that period of intense, personal suffering and courageous self-exploration, emerged the very core of his life's work, analytical psychology. The concepts that would change the face of modern thought, the shadow, the collective unconscious archetypes, and the process of individuation, were not born in a sterile academic library. They were forged in the fire of his own experience. He discovered that the parts of ourselves we were most terrified of, our chaos, our irrationality, our darkness, our pain, are not the enemy. They are not obstacles to our growth. They are the fertile ground from which all true wisdom grows. Honor the mud, the lotus rises. He learned that the soul, like nature, has its own seasons, and the winter of despair is necessary for the spring of renewal. Like the lotus flower, which cannot exist without the murky depths from which it rises. Jung's story teaches us the first and most fundamental principle of self-compassion. You do not need to fix the mud. You do not need to purify it, or escape it, or pretend it isn't there. You only need to trust that it holds the seeds of your own becoming. Think about your own life, your tough days, your moments of crisis, your feelings of being lost, confused, or broken. What if they aren't a sign that something is wrong with you? What if, instead, they're a call from your own soul, an invitation to turn inward, to be still, and to find the unique wisdom that only grows in the dark soil of your own personal history? This is the first foundational step of the Lotus Method. It is a radical shift in perspective, away from self-criticism and towards a gentle curiosity. It is the practice of honoring the mud. It is the quiet promise you make to yourself to stop fighting your own experience and start listening to it. It is the belief, even and especially when it feels impossible, that something beautiful is waiting to rise through the surface. This is not about passive resignation. It is an active, courageous trust in the architecture of your own becoming. It is the choice to believe that, like Jung, your deepest wound can become the source of your greatest strength. Honoring the mud is a beautiful idea, but how do we do it in a practical sense? When we feel overwhelmed by self-criticism, the answer lies in understanding what self-compassion actually is. It's not self-pity. It's not self-indulgence. According to Dr. Kristen Neff, the pioneering researcher in this field, it is a practice made of 3 core components. And surprisingly, we can see these components in the private life of one of history's greatest scientific minds, Charles Darwin. Even the man who changed our understanding of life was haunted by the fear of being wrong. His private journals reveal a man plagued by chronic illness, deep anxiety, and relentless self-doubt. He worried constantly that his theory of evolution would destroy people's faith, that he would be remembered as a heretic. Yet, in the way he navigated his struggle, he unknowingly practiced the 3 pillars of self-compassion. The first is self-kindness. Instead of pushing his ailing body past its limits, Darwin learned to work with it. He took long breaks, went for walks, and accepted the slow, deliberate pace his health demanded. He treated himself with a gentleness his ambitious mind likely resisted. He was kind to his limitations rather than fighting them. The second is common humanity. Darwin's work was rooted in the understanding that all life is connected. He saw humans not as separate from nature, but as a part of it. This perspective offers a profound relief. When we struggle, our inner critic tells us, What's wrong with me? Common humanity reminds us that suffering, failure, and imperfection are not personal defects. They are the shared, universal experience of being human. Darwin, in his doubt, was not alone. He was simply human. How often do you treat your own suffering as a personal failure, rather than a sign that you belong to the human family? The third is mindfulness. Darwin was a master observer. He would spend hours patiently watching a single plant or animal, noticing every detail without rushing to judgment. This is mindfulness, a balanced, open awareness of the present moment. It's the ability to observe our thoughts and feelings without getting swept away by them. We can say, there's sadness, or there's the voice of my inner critic, without having to become them. Self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. These are not just abstract concepts. They are tools. They're a lifeline on a tough day. When you feel you've failed, you can be kind to yourself. You can remember that everyone fails, and you can mindfully observe the feeling without letting it define you. This is the science behind the Lotus Method. It is a trainable skill for calming your own inner storm. What would you say to your dearest friend on their worst day? Imagine them sitting before you, their shoulders heavy, their spirit bruised. You wouldn't meet their pain with judgment or impatience. You would likely offer words of comfort, of perspective, of unconditional love. You would say, "This is hard, but you are strong." You would say, "This feeling is not forever." You would say, "I am here with you." Now ask yourself this, and be honest. Why don't you ever say that to yourself? In the private courtroom of our own minds, we are so often the harsh judge, the unforgiving prosecutor, and the silent jury. The voice of compassion is reserved for others, while for ourselves, there is only the cold, unforgiving echo of our inner critic. One of the most powerful ways to cultivate self-compassion is to find a way to externalize that kind voice, to make it tangible, to give form. Perhaps no one understood this better than the poet Rainer Maria Rilke. For years, he corresponded with a young poet named Franz Capus, offering profound and gentle guidance on solitude, doubt, and creativity. His famous Letters to a Young Poet became a masterclass in compassionate mentorship, a touchstone for anyone seeking to live a more authentic life. Rilke became a wise, steady friend to a young man he had never even met, guiding him through the geography of a lonely heart. But here's a question worth living with. What if Rilke, in writing to this young man, was also writing to himself? What if, in offering counsel to another, he was also tending to the younger, more doubtful parts of his own soul? His words became a sacred, internal dialogue. He wrote to Capus, "Do not seek the answers that cannot be given you now. Lie the questions themselves." This wasn't just advice. It was a personal philosophy, a practice of immense patience, of learning to be with uncertainty without collapsing. Through his letters, writing became his exercise in self-compassion, a profound and intimate meeting between the one who feels lost and the one who gently points the way. This is the heart of our next practice, the courageous act of writing a letter to yourself. I invite you to try this, not as a task, but as a gift. Not tomorrow, but today if you can. Find a quiet space where you will not be disturbed. Think about something you are genuinely struggling with, a mistake that haunts you, a flaw you can't seem to accept, a part of your story you carry with shame, or a tough situation that feels overwhelming. Now, close your eyes for a moment. Imagine your wisest, kindest self, the part of you that is patient and loving. Or, if that feels too difficult, imagine a real person who loves you unconditionally, or even the wise, loving grandparent you wish you had. From that sacred perspective, from that wellspring of pure compassion, begin to write a letter to the part of you that is hurting. Let the words come softly. Let them hold your pain with tenderness. Let them remind you that you are not alone in your struggle, that your suffering, too, belongs to the great human story. As you write, something begins to shift. You start to recognize that your pain is not a flaw to be erased, but a doorway to deeper understanding. You begin to see yourself through gentler eyes, to feel, perhaps for the first time, what it means to be met with your own kindness. When you engage in this practice, you're no longer just a person who is suffering. In the very act of writing, you also become the one who offers comfort. You're creating a new, internal relationship based on care, not criticism. You are becoming your own safe harbor. And then comes the most transformative part of the ritual, reading the letter back to yourself, especially aloud. As you speak the words, feel the vibration in your chest. Hear the echo of kindness in the room. For the first time, you might be truly hearing the words you've always needed to hear, spoken in your own familiar voice. This is not just an exercise. It is a ceremony of self-love. It is a patient mirror held up to your own heart, reflecting back the beautiful, boundless compassion that was inside you all along. Writing a letter to yourself is a deep and powerful practice of excavation. It is the work of a patient archaeologist of the heart. But on some days, on the truly tough days, you may not have the energy for it. There are moments when the weight of the world feels so immense that the simple act of picking up a pen feels like lifting a mountain. You might feel so overwhelmed, so flooded by emotion, that all you can do is survive the next 5 minutes. For these moments, you don't need a grand gesture or profound insight. You need a lifeline. You need an anchor. You need a micro-ritual. You only need 2 minutes. What if true strength isn't about endurance, but about permission? The permission to pause, even for a moment. The master of this sacred pause is Jon Kabat-Zinn, founder of the globally recognized mindfulness-based stress reduction program. He developed this practice not for wellness enthusiasts in serene yoga studios, but for people in the trenches of human suffering, patients dealing with chronic, debilitating pain and life-altering illnesses. These were people whose suffering was a constant, unwelcome companion. He needed to teach them a simple, radical, accessible practice, to find a sliver of peace in the midst of storm, a way to find an island of calm in an ocean of pain. And so he did. The ritual he created can be done anywhere at any time, in a crowded office, in a silent car, or in the middle of a sleepless night. It begins with the simplest yet most revolutionary act in our modern world: stopping, just for a moment. Whatever you are doing, whatever thoughts are racing through your mind, just stop, and then place a hand on your heart or on your stomach, somewhere you can feel the steady, quiet warmth of your own touch. This physical contact is not trivial. It is a profound biological signal, a sacred, nonverbal promise you make to your body. Now, with your hand resting there, take one conscious breath. Don't try to change it or deepen it. Just feel the air coming into your body and feel it leaving. Silently offer yourself a few words of kindness. The first phrase is, "This is a moment of suffering. Pause here. Feel it. Let it settle." The second phrase, "Suffering is a part of life." Pause again. Connect with the vast human family. You're not alone. The third phrase, the gentle intention. "May I be kind to myself in this moment." Pause once more. Feel the grace in your chest. Grant yourself permission. That's it. Stop. Touch. Breathe. Speak kindly. Take a few moments here. Just a breath or two. Let yourself fully experience this pause. This 2-minute ritual is a powerful interruption to the downward spiral of negative self-talk and anxiety. It grounds you in the present moment and in the physical reality of your body. The lotus of calm can, indeed, bloom in the space of just a few breaths. It is a revolution of tenderness. That takes less time than making a cup of tea. So, the question is not whether you have the time. The question is whether you believe you are worthy of it. Can you give yourself the gift of that space right now? It is enough, and so are you. Self-care often fails because we treat it like an emergency rescue. We wait until we are completely burned out, until our mind feels like smoke and our body feels like ash. And then we book a spa day or a vacation, hoping it will fix everything. But that's like waiting for your house to be on fire before you think about installing a smoke detector. True lasting well-being is not about dramatic interventions. It's about a consistent daily practice. It's about having a maintenance plan. The philosopher Simone Weil lived a life of quiet but profound spiritual discipline. She believed that the highest form of love was not a passionate feeling, but a state of constant, gentle attention. Even while sick and living through the turmoil of her time, she maintained simple, daily rituals to keep her soul oriented, writing, contemplating, and ending each day with what she called the exercise of waiting for grace. Her life shows us that self-compassion isn't just a feeling. It is a structure. It is a commitment, a quiet architecture built from small, faithful acts. Your maintenance plan is your personal structure for compassionate living, and it doesn't have to be complicated. It might be scheduling a 10-minute walk into your day without your phone, a walk where you simply listen to the world breathing. It might be setting a daily alarm that reminds you to check in with your inner tone. Am I being kind to myself right now? Am I speaking to myself like someone I love? It might be committing to 1-2-minute micro-ritual every morning before you check your email, lighting a candle, breathing, placing a hand over your heart, and whispering, "I am here." The key is to treat these practices with the same importance as a work meeting or a doctor's appointment. They are non-negotiable appointments with yourself, sacred moments that say, "My well-being matters." This is how you cultivate the garden of your soul. You don't wait for the weeds of despair to take over. You tend to the soil every single day. You ensure there is enough light, enough water, enough presence. Simone Weil saw this kind of self-care as a form of inner fidelity, a loyalty to your own well-being. And fidelity is not a feeling that comes and goes. It's a daily act of remembrance. It's showing up for yourself, even when it's inconvenient, even when the world feels loud and chaotic. A maintenance plan is your promise to yourself that you are worthy of consistent care, not just emergency repairs. Over time, this practice changes you. You stop living in a state of reactive crisis management and start living from a place of grounded, proactive self-respect. You begin to notice beauty again, the way sunlight touches your desk, the sound of rain against the window, the warmth of your own breath. You become a witness to your own unfolding, a gardener, patient and kind, tending the living landscape within. You're no longer just surviving the mud. You're actively cultivating the lotus. And perhaps one day, you will look back and realize that what once felt like struggle was actually the beginning of a sacred rhythm, the quiet art of staying true to yourself. We started this journey on a tough day, with the harsh voice of an inner critic. We walked with Carl Jung into the fertile darkness of the soul. We learned the science of compassion with Charles Darwin. We wrote a letter of love with Rilke, took a healing breath with John Kabat-Zinn, and built a sustainable practice with Simone Weil. What have we learned? We've learned that self-compassion is not a weakness, but a courageous and intelligent way of navigating the human experience. It is the practice of meeting our own pain with a warm and steady presence. It is the understanding that we are worthy of kindness, not because we are perfect, but because we are human. The Lotus Method is ultimately a return to yourself. It is a recognition that you are the lotus, beautiful and resilient. You are the mud, full of the messy, difficult, and fertile experiences that make you who you are. And you are the water, the conscious, compassionate awareness that connects them. You do not need to wait for a perfect day to begin. The practice is for this day, for this moment. The next time that critical voice appears, the next time you feel you are not enough, I invite you to remember the lotus and gently, kindly begin again. If this practice of self-compassion resonated with you, consider sharing this video. You never know who might be having a tough day. And for more journeys into compassionate living, feel free to subscribe and join our community. Thank you for taking this time for yourself. Be well.